Cinema Classics is brought to you by the Gateway Film Center at 1550 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio. Further details and showtimes online at gatewayfilmcenter.org.
The award-winning Cinema Classics is produced by John DeSando and Johnny DiLoretto. Listen to the shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm Johnny DiLoretto.
And I'm Sommer Sterud.
And this is Cinema Classics, and John DeSando is sitting this one out.
Yes.
Because there's not enough room for all this personality.
It's too much competition.
In one tiny frame.
Exactly.
We can't cram it all in.
Nope.
Okay, so we're going to talk about romantic films,
Yes.
but specifically
the self-destructive kind.
yeah, the really
That burn up.
yeah,
Yeah.
the flammable ones.
Yes.
Now, typically a romance, like your typical romantic comedy, I was trying to think of this last night. What's the basic formula that happens in your typical romantic film? Like, say for instance, When Harry Met Sally.
When Harry Met Sally. It's boy meets girl.
Yeah, boy meets
chases
girl.
after girl.
Right. And then there's
Maybe.
usually some sort of like something that gets in the way.
Yes, there's
And then a reunion in the third
a
act.
reunion.
And everything
there's
is great.
Yeah.
So we're talking about movies where they meet early.
And it's instant.
It's instant, and then it just kind of like destroys everything.
Yes.
So one of the films we're talking about is True Romance.
Yes, True Romance.
Which, had you seen
Which
that?
I hadn't seen it before.
No, what'd you
No.
think?
I loved it. I think when it first came out, I looked at it as, I just saw a lot of the action and violence, and I was a little turned off by it. Not that I'm against that, but I didn't see the romantic part of it. And then I saw it, and I loved it. I loved how they just instantly got each other.
Yeah.
You know?
So they fall in love very early on in the movie. They get married early on, and then as soon as that happens, murder and mayhem ensues.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of great. By the end of the movie, Clarence and Alabama have left probably 150 dead bodies in their way. Not necessarily at their own hands, but I think that's what's great about that movie is they make off, well, when they get married, he finds out that she was a prostitute, and he's instantly moved to go free her from her pimp.
Yeah.
Which is a brilliant Gary Oldman. And then that scene is brutal. There's a lot of...
There's a lot. And he just comes back and eats a burger.
Yeah.
And she kind of loves him even more for having done it.
Mm-hmm.
But I gotta say, we had to talk about this. Yeah. I wanted there to be more leading up to that moment where he decides to just leave the house and go find her. Because I wasn't getting enough of that side of his personality, so it came as a really big surprise to me.
Yeah.
But you didn't think so.
No, I mean, I love that movie. I've seen it so many times that it plays out like a little song to me. Like, all the rhythms are perfect. I think that opening sequence where Clarence is talking to the girl at the bar and he's talking about Elvis being the only man that he would have sex with.
Yeah.
And, the whirlwind romance that he has with Alabama at the comic book store and the movies when they see the Sonny Chiba films.
Yeah.
And then they, go back to his place and they make love. And then when she confesses, I think for me it's the confession that she makes to him. When she says, "This is who I am. I got to tell you this. I got to be completely honest with you." And she lays it all out for him.
That is my favorite moment.
And I think that actually is for me, that's the motivation for him.
Yeah, I can see that. I love that moment. He can't find her. He wakes up. They've just made love, and she's outside, like wrapped in a blanket or whatever, shivering, smoking a cigarette. She's just broken. She looks, and he's like, "What?" He immediately thinks he said something wrong.
Yeah, right.
What did I say? And she was just so worried that it was as if she felt she had already betrayed him by not having told him that right away. So she didn't even want to sleep next to him until she came clean.
Yeah, she was, mulling it all over.
And then the way they say they love each other, I just love that.
Yeah.
He's like, if I'm gonna, am I gonna say what I'm about to say? Because if I'm gonna say it, you're not gonna say it. Anyway.
I'm gonna die. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. So that movie is Quentin Tarantino's first script. It was directed by Tony Scott. If anybody hasn't seen it out there, you should see that one. What about something a little different, not quite as romantic, but Raging Bull? And I don't even think people normally would think of that as a romance, but I think that buried under that character study of Jake LaMotta is a love story.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's an interesting contrast to True Romance because Alabama had a past and her personality. I mean, she basically makes out with his father when she leaves. After she first meets his father, Christian Slater's father, she kisses him goodbye and it's like it's all over him.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
a long kiss.
But Vicky, right, in Raging Bull, she doesn't really give him that much. I mean, she says a fighter's cute or good looking, and he loses it, you know.
Yeah.
But he never catches her. She never really exhibits anything that is real evidence that she's doing anything behind his back, and yet,
right.
You know.
So there's an instant attraction on his part when he spots her at the swimming pool, and then that, you know, he's married at the time, but that sort of instigates this slow burn romance, which is vaguely threatening because he's so much older than she is.
Yeah,
and
she's 15 in the movie, but
yeah. And then there's all this kind of religious sort of import looming over everything. He takes her to his dad's apartment, and there's a crucifix hanging everywhere they go.
Yeah.
Sort of foreboding maybe that this relationship is doomed.
Yeah, there's a lot of restraint in that movie, a repressed feeling, and in True Romance, there's just I'm gonna do it all. I'm gonna say all of it. I'm gonna kill people for you. You know, and there's a lot of restraint sexually.
See, that's an interesting question. So, these characters in True Romance, they're very expressive. They say exactly what they're thinking. They are very articulate. They have this sort of built-in Tarantino ability to regurgitate, you know, what they're feeling and where it comes from, and Jake and Vicky don't have that. Jake and Vicky are sort of ignorant street people who are kind of slave to their emotions. So how does the soulfulness kind of come in there? Is there a love there between those two?
Oh, you know, I don't think so. Like, I feel as though De Niro's character just kind of took what he wanted. You know, he saw her, he got her, you know. And, well, I don't know. I don't know. Because I didn't feel that same, when I think about their relationship, I don't get like that warmth. Like, oh, well, they're codependent, but they love each other, you know?
Yeah.
And yet she stays with him after he goes crazy, you know? At least the first few times. And I don't know, do you think that they're...
I do. I do think that there's a love there. I think there was a love there. It's, you know, like I said, they can't articulate it. Those characters are hard-pressed to articulate their feelings for each other, which is why I think Jake in particular, any sort of thing that he feels, guilt, rage, jealousy, he takes it out in the ring.
Yeah.
That's where he can express himself. Unfortunately for Vicky, her ring is where they live.
Yeah.
You know, and she's kind of always negotiating this dance with him so she doesn't tip him off or, you know, push him over the edge. But one little thing, if she says one tiny little thing wrong, it gets in his head, and you know, and there's tension.
I was thinking about these three movies, and I was thinking about I don't want to ruin anything for people who haven't seen True Romance, but it's much happier, even despite all of the death.
Yeah.
And Raging Bull and Last Tango, it just doesn't end well, you know, and it's, you know, and I feel like it's because those two are representations of love that it's more about being in love with yourself. Like, I think Jake LaMotta was just in love with himself.
Yeah.
And he was committed or more devoted to his insecurities, his jealousy, and boxing and everything else.
Right. Well, that makes sense because that relationship, ultimately, she leaves him.
Right.
And you know, then he reaches his lowest point,
Right.
which arguably may be the moment in the film where he finds a scrap of his humanity in that jail cell. What about Last Tango in Paris?
Oh, wow. I saw this movie years ago and kind of forgot about it. And then when I saw it again, it was haunting. Like, I dreamed about it.
Yeah.
You know? And this was... I just love this. It's like a poem. It's so, like, there are windows and mirrors everywhere, like the symbolism in it and everything, but it is just like, it was just haunting. And the dance that they do throughout the film, where it's mostly her, she wants to know things about him.
So let's set it up real quick. So Brando is a recent his widower, and Maria Schneider is this young girl who's just like, she's in a relationship with this kind of
stereotypical,
this artistic filmmaker kid.
Yeah.
And she meets Brando on the streets of Paris, and they decide to have a tryst in an empty apartment, which becomes their place.
Yeah.
And the idea is that they keep all the outside world from encroaching upon their space, where they meet to really just make love and work through their issues together.
And
so
Brando's character is like, I don't want to know names, I don't want to know anything about you.
Yeah.
And so, but she starts to want to know, and she starts to want to make this real, and he doesn't. And so, I don't know, some obvious problems arise because of it. But then he turns around in the end. It seems like she's chasing him. She wants all of him, and it's just out of reach. And then at the end, he kind of just breaks down and says he's in love with her after all. And then she doesn't want it, you know? Right. But there's this scene. I mean, there are a couple of scenes that are just like, I mean, there's this explicit sex scene that involves butter.
Right.
Right? And I actually read about this, and it was a surprise, like, that day. She didn't know that was going to happen. And it was like Brando's idea. And she was...
Naturally.
She was mad. You know, she didn't know any better either as a young actress to get her agent in there or whatever. And those tears were very real. It feels it. I mean, that's just, you know... It
is a raw scene.
Yeah. And it changed her, actually. If you read about it, she felt extremely violated by it. And
did they... I should know this, but I don't. Was, like... Did he put butter in her backside? Like, what?
He didn't know. There wasn't...
It was just the idea of it that was...
It was, like, around the area. It wasn't actually inside, you know, anywhere.
I'm just curious as why it was so traumatic.
She found it to be humiliating. She wanted to be thought of as she felt like an object, which she was. I mean, they both were to each other in this film. The premise is that.
Yeah.
But she felt violated. Yeah.
Okay, real quick, we gotta wrap up, but I want to ask you a question about these movies. So, or Last Tango in Paris specifically. True Romance, we know that there's a lot of murder and mayhem. Raging Bull, that romance ends in a lot of physical abuse. He even beats the crap out of his brother because he's jealous of his brother. What is the destruction here between these two characters in Last Tango?
I think there's a sexual kind of abuse might be strong, and a mental breakdown.
Yeah. So the destruction is an emotional one on both sides?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just think that it's interesting that we decided to talk about these three films, and the central relationship is destructive in a very different way, even narratively and psychologically and emotionally. It's
really interesting.
All great films.
But true love prevailed in True Romance.
That's right. So let's focus on that one.